The unrelenting Australian sun doesn't just fade things, it cooks them, bleaches them, and eventually breaks their spirit. This number plate is proof. Once golden, once proud, once the badge that gave this trailer permission to exist on public roads. Now it's a faded, dirty ghost of its former self. The black lettering that used to pop with crisp contrast has been worn down to a kind of exhausted whisper. The edges tell their own story, once sharp enough to slice leather, now warped and ragged, like the wrinkles of a very old face that's seen too many summers. And then there are the extra holes. 10 fixing points. 10! As if the previous owners thought that the plate needed to survive hurricane-force winds or a trip through the outback strapped to the roof of a ute. This is vandalism disguised as being helpful. And beneath it all, the rust. The kind that starts quietly, like a melanoma hiding under the skin, then eventually bursts through the surface in ugly little eruptions. The back of the plate looks like a petri dish someone forgot to throw out. Rust spreading, eating, weakening everything it touches. This number plate isn't just old. It's a senior citizen in the number plate world. And if we're going to save it, we're going to have to do some work to it. So let's get started. Where do you even begin with something like this? The number plate might look weathered and sun-scorched and generally offended by existence. But underneath all of that abuse, it's still mostly flat, straight enough to give me hope. Dangerous, misguided hope. Chasing the easy wins, I grab the most savage wire cup that I own and fire up the angle grinder. 3,000 RPM of pure enthusiasm. The moment that wheel hits the surface, the old paint doesn't just surrender, it flees. Layers of sunburnt colour vaporising like they were never meant to be there. And for a moment, I'm happy. Stupidly happy. Drunk happy. But with overindulgence comes the inevitable hangover. This is where I get careless. I forget that I'm holding a tiny tornado in my hands, and I let the wire wheel drift, not once, twice. The first time it reminds me to take care. I ignore that warning. The second time it teaches me a lesson. A moment of inattention becomes another trauma scar that needs to be addressed. Brilliant. Another repair added to the list. And I've only just started. Idiot. But with a hammer, a cold chisel, and a level of blind faith usually reserved for religious experiences, the plate eventually gives in. It straightens out, reluctantly, like an old man being told to stand up straight for a photo. Not perfect, but recognisably flat again. And that's good enough for now. Time to tackle the rust. The part of the job that always feels like you're negotiating with a disease rather than fixing metal. This time, I dial back the aggression. A gentler wire wheel, better clamp placement. A little more respect for the fact that this number plate is basically a pensioner. And slowly, the rust yields. Bare metal starts to peek through, like skin under a scab. But what also shows itself is the damage. The places where the rust didn't just nibble, it feasted. Metal that offers no resistance, collapsing into holes that now join the 10 fixing holes already there. If nothing else, I learned that aggression should be saved for the power slap podium. Here, finesse is the only way forward. So add sandpaper to the arsenal. Slower, more deliberate and personal. And yeah, the work time goes up, way up. But there's something satisfying about it. Something honest. Like the number plate and I are finally having a conversation instead of having a fight. Cleaning time. Quick, simple, and absolutely unforgiving. This is the part that reminds me of two very important truths. First, the acetone wipe down. It strips away every trace of grease, wax, and whatever biological material had fused itself to the number plate over the last decade. Essential for adhesion, essential for paint, essential for pretending that we know what we're doing. And the number plate comes up clean, shockingly clean, like it's been waiting for this moment. The second truth? Well, every single micro cut from the wire wheel and sandpaper suddenly announces itself, loudly. All those moments earlier in the video where I proudly wore no gloves like some DIY purist, well, they come back with interest. Acetone doesn't strip flesh, at least I don't think it does, but it sure feels like it's trying. So you work through it, because at this point pain is just part of the process, and this number plate isn't going to save itself. After stripping away the paint, the rust, the grease, and every other uninvited guest that refused to leave, it's finally time to deal with the surface itself. What's left behind is a battlefield, pits, dimples, tiny craters, and holes where the rust was particularly enthusiastic. It's a long list of sins to correct, but thankfully they can all be handled with one miracle product, a good old-fashioned body filler. The same stuff used on restorations worth tens of thousands of dollars. The same stuff every car enthusiast curses if it's been applied thicker than a couple of millimetres. Lucky for us, we only need a small portion, a dab of filler, a whisper of hardener. Mix it thoroughly, apply liberally, and let it cure for half an hour. A perfect time for lunch. When we come back, it's sanding time. The great equaliser. Coarse grit to knock down the bulk, then finer and finer until the feathering disappears and the surface feels like glass. If you've done your prep properly, you'll sand off 90% of the filler you just applied. And that's the point. You're not building a new plate, you're just convincing the old one to look like it hasn't suffered decades of neglect. We're not quite ready for the base coat yet, but we are ready for primer. Etch primer to be exact. The good stuff. The kind that chemically bites into the metal and creates a stable, obedient little layer for the base coat to cling to. Was it strictly necessary? Well, plenty of people will probably say that this is overkill. But let's be honest, we crossed the overkill line back at the start of this video. So why pretend that we're sensible now? Jokes aside, primer actually matters. Especially when the surface is a patchwork of finishes. Bare metal, filler, old scars, and whatever history the rust left behind. The primer evens that all out. It smooths the mood swings, minimises the colour variances, and gives the base coat the best possible chance of looking like it actually belongs here. It's the quiet hero of the paint world. Invisible, uncelebrated, but absolutely essential if you want the final result to look like something more than a desperate rescue mission. And now for the base coat, the colour. The moment everything has been building towards since the second we pressed the record button. This is the part that everybody will see, the part that actually matters, the part that decides whether this number plate looks restored or just freshly embarrassed. This older style Western Australian plate wears a black writing on a yellow background. I have no idea what the official yellow code is, and honestly, I didn't bother finding out. I grabbed the rattle can yellow already sitting on the shelf. Should the exact shade matter? Well, normally yes, absolutely. But in this case, it won't matter at all. And the reason for that will make perfect sense at the end. I go with medium coats, steady, controlled, nothing too wild. The plate is flat, so paint runs are unlikely unless I really try to sabotage myself. Layer after layer builds up, each pass deepening the gloss, smoothing the surface and bringing the plate back to life. Slowly the yellow stops looking like desperation and starts looking intentional, like maybe, just maybe, this old plate has a future again. We're nearly finished. All that's left is to fill in the stamped letters and numbers with black. And then we can finally call this number plate done. Simple, right? Well, let me confess something. This is the point where I absolutely ruin everything. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. What I thought would be the easiest part turned out to be the most infuriating, soul-draining task of the entire project. I'd watched YouTube tutorials. They made it look effortless. A quick dab, a gentle pass, and boom, perfect lettering. Lies. My first attempt was using a pad and applying black to the raised surfaces. Total failure. So I buried the evidence under a couple more coats of yellow. Then I tried masking the background and spraying black over the top. Wrong again. And then I tried painting the raised letters directly. After consuming an entire can of yellow and half a can of black, I finally ended up with something that looks acceptable. And from a distance. Maybe a very generous distance. I generally admire the people who make this look easy online. Either they're wizards or I'm just particularly bad at this part. And probably both. Finally, A couple of coats of clear and we're done. The surface locks in, the gloss deepens, and for a brief moment this number plate looks like it's ready to return to active duty, proud, shiny and reborn. But now the reason why the shade of yellow never mattered. In Western Australia, it's actually illegal to repaint a number plate. Completely illegal. Which means that this beautifully restored, freshly resurrected plate will never see the road again. Not on a registered trailer, not on anything. I wish I'd known that before I started. But here we are. Hours of work, half a can of black, a full can of yellow, and a result destined purely for display. If you've enjoyed watching me suffer through this restoration, remember to like, share and subscribe. Comments are always welcome, especially if you know a legal way to make this plate useful again.